She had always believed that happiness did not come from wealth, but from the warmth of genuine love and the quiet comfort of a simple life. Raised with humility and kindness, she carried herself with a grace that came not from luxury, but from the values her father had instilled in her since childhood. To the world, they were ordinary people, her father a reserved, aging man who lived modestly, and she, a gentle woman who found joy in small things. She never questioned why her father avoided extravagance or why he seemed distant from society's elite circles. To her, he was simply a loving parent who valued peace over pride. When she married, she poured that same sincerity into her relationship, trusting her husband completely and believing they were building a life rooted in love rather than material gain. Their home was modest, their lifestyle simple, yet she felt fulfilled, convinced that she had everything she needed. Beneath this quiet existence, however, lay an unseen truth, a hidden power that neither she nor anyone around her fully understood. Her father's life, though outwardly unremarkable, carried a depth of secrecy that would soon surface in ways she could never have imagined, altering the course of her life forever. Her father was not the ordinary man the world believed him to be. Behind his quiet demeanor and simple lifestyle existed a vast, powerful empire that stretched across industries and continents, built through years of intelligence, strategy, and discipline. He had chosen anonymity over recognition, carefully concealing his immense wealth from society and, most importantly, from his own daughter. To him, love and loyalty could only be genuine if untouched by greed, and so he raised her in a world free from the influence of money. Yet there were always subtle hints that something was different. Private meetings he never explained, mysterious phone calls he would take behind closed doors, and moments when influential figures treated him with an unusual level of respect. She noticed these things but never questioned them deeply, trusting him completely. His protective nature guided every decision he made, ensuring that she grew up surrounded by sincerity rather than opportunism. But fate had its own plans, and the carefully guarded truth of his identity would not remain hidden forever. His absence would not only leave an emotional void, but would also unlock a reality that would shake the very foundation of her life. Her husband had entered her life like a dream, charming and attentive in ways that made her feel truly seen and valued. He knew exactly what to say, how to make her laugh, and how to create the illusion of a perfect partner. In the early days, his warmth and ambition drew her in, convincing her that he shared her vision of a simple yet meaningful life. They lived modestly, managing expenses carefully, and often spoke about building a better future together. Yet beneath his affectionate gestures, there were cracks she chose to ignore. He often complained about their financial situation, expressing frustration over missed opportunities and envying those who lived in luxury. His eyes would linger a little too long on expensive cars, lavish homes, and wealthy acquaintances, revealing a hunger for something more. She dismissed it as harmless ambition, believing that love would always be enough to sustain them. But as time passed, his dissatisfaction grew, and the subtle tension in his words began to hint at a deeper discontent. The life she believed was built on love alone slowly revealed itself to be fragile, resting on illusions she had not yet fully recognized. When she discovered she was pregnant, her world filled with a joy so pure and overwhelming that it seemed to erase every doubt she had ever felt. She held the news close to her heart at first, savoring the quiet excitement before sharing it with her husband, imagining the happiness it would bring to their lives. In her mind, this was the beginning of a beautiful new chapter, one where their love would grow stronger as they built a family together. She pictured laughter filling their home, tiny footsteps echoing through their halls, and a future where their child would be surrounded by warmth and security. But when she finally told him, his reaction was not what she had dreamed of. There was a pause, a flicker of hesitation in his eyes, a forced smile that did not quite reach his expression. Though he offered words of congratulations, something in his tone felt distant, as if the reality of fatherhood weighed heavily on him rather than bringing joy. She tried to ignore the subtle disappointment, convincing herself that he simply needed time to adjust. Yet beneath her excitement, a quiet unease began to grow, marking the first true divide between her hopeful heart and his increasingly distant demeanor. The day her father died came without warning, shattering her world in an instant. One moment, he had been there, a steady, comforting presence, and the next, he was gone, leaving behind a silence that felt unbearable. Grief consumed her completely, wrapping around her heart with a heaviness she had never known before. She struggled to accept the reality of his absence, replaying memories in her mind and clinging to the sound of his voice as if it might somehow bring him back. The house felt emptier, colder, as though a piece of its foundation had been torn away. In her vulnerability, she leaned on her husband, seeking comfort in the one person she believed would stand by her no matter what. At first, he appeared supportive, offering reassuring words and gentle gestures, but there was something distant in his concern, something that felt practiced rather than genuine. While she mourned deeply, he seemed distracted, his attention drifting elsewhere even in her moments of pain. Unbeknownst to her, this loss was not just emotional. It was the beginning of a revelation that would transform everything she thought she knew about her life, her father, and the people she trusted most. The truth emerged slowly, almost unreal at first, as lawyers and officials began to arrive with documents that revealed a reality she could barely comprehend. Her father, the quiet man who had lived so simply, was in fact the owner of a vast and unimaginable fortune, a trillionaire whose empire spanned countless industries and countries. The scale of it was overwhelming: properties, corporations, investments, and assets that stretched far beyond anything she had ever known. As she sat in stunned silence, listening to the details unfold, her mind struggled to reconcile the man she had loved with the powerful figure being described. It felt as though she had been living in a carefully constructed illusion, one designed to protect her from the very truth now being revealed. While she grappled with shock and disbelief, her husband's reaction was entirely different. Though he tried to hide it, a spark of something darker flickered in his eyes: greed, ambition, a sudden realization of what this meant for him. The news did not just change her life. It awakened something within him that had been waiting for an opportunity to surface, setting the stage for a betrayal far greater than she could have imagined. Almost overnight, his behavior began to shift in ways that felt both subtle and unsettling. He became more attentive, more affectionate, showering her with a level of care that seemed excessive compared to his previous indifference. At first, she wanted to believe it was genuine, that the news of her father's legacy had somehow brought them closer together. But as days passed, his actions began to reveal a different motive. Conversations that once revolved around their future now centered on finances, inheritance, and control. He asked detailed questions about the assets, about legal authority, about decisions that needed to be made, all under the guise of concern for their family's well-being. His tone carried a persuasive edge, as though he were trying to guide her choices in a direction that benefited him. Though she remained emotionally fragile from her loss, a quiet unease began to take root in her heart. Something about his sudden transformation felt unnatural, as if the man she loved was slowly being replaced by someone driven by motives she could no longer ignore. While she struggled to process her grief and the overwhelming truth about her father, another presence quietly re-entered his life, one that would deepen the cracks in their already fragile marriage. The mistress was everything the wife was not: bold, glamorous, and unapologetically ambitious. She carried herself with confidence, fully aware of the wealth now surrounding him and the opportunities it presented. Their connection, whether newly rekindled or never truly ended, thrived in secrecy, hidden behind late-night messages and discreet meetings. He promised her a future filled with luxury, painting vivid pictures of a life far removed from the simplicity he had once shared with his wife. With every lie he told, every moment he spent away, the betrayal grew stronger, more deliberate. The mistress encouraged his desires, feeding his ambition and reinforcing the idea that he deserved more than the life he had been living. Meanwhile, his wife remained unaware, still clinging to the belief that despite everything, their bond could survive. But the truth was already unfolding behind her back, and the distance between them was growing with each passing day. The betrayal came not as a dramatic explosion, but as a cold, calculated decision that left her shattered. One day, without warning, he chose to walk away, offering excuses that sounded hollow even as he spoke them. He spoke of pressure, of responsibility, of feeling trapped by circumstances he claimed he could no longer bear. But beneath those words lay the undeniable truth. He was leaving her for another woman, abandoning her at the most vulnerable moment of her life. Pregnant, grieving, and emotionally fragile, she found herself standing alone, struggling to comprehend how everything had fallen apart so quickly. The man she had trusted, the life she had believed in, all crumbled in an instant. Her heart broke under the weight of his betrayal, her mind replaying every moment, searching for answers that only led to more pain. As the reality settled in, she realized that the love she had held onto so tightly had never been as strong as she believed, and the future she had imagined was nothing more than a fragile illusion. Left alone to face the world, she descended into a place of deep emotional and physical exhaustion. Pregnancy, once a source of joy, became a challenge she had to endure without support, each day bringing new fears and uncertainties. The silence of her home echoed with absence, reminding her of everything she had lost. Despite the immense wealth now at her fingertips, she felt empty, unable to connect with a reality that seemed so distant from the life she had known. The betrayal cut deeply, leaving scars that made her question her own judgment, her ability to trust, and even her worth. Nights were the hardest, filled with restless thoughts and quiet tears, as she struggled to find strength for the sake of her unborn child. At her lowest point, she felt completely broken, standing at the edge of despair, unsure of how to move forward. But slowly, something within her began to shift. As days turned into weeks, she found herself drawn into the world her father had left behind, a world she had once been shielded from but now had to face. Guided by advisors and loyal associates, she began to understand the depth of his legacy, learning about the businesses he had built and the influence he had wielded. At first, it felt overwhelming, but with each step, she grew more confident, more determined to honor his memory. The process of learning, of taking control, became a source of strength, helping her rebuild the pieces of herself that had been shattered. She was no longer just a grieving daughter or an abandoned wife. She was becoming something more, someone capable of standing on her own. Her transformation was gradual but undeniable. The woman who once doubted herself began to carry an air of quiet authority, her presence commanding respect in rooms filled with powerful individuals. She refined her appearance, her confidence shining through in the way she spoke and carried herself. No longer defined by her past, she built a new identity rooted in strength and independence. The pain she had endured became the foundation of her growth, shaping her into someone untouchable by the betrayal that had once broken her. She no longer needed validation from anyone, especially not the man who had abandoned her. Meanwhile, the life her husband had chosen began to unravel. The promises of luxury and ease quickly gave way to tension and instability as the reality of his decisions caught up with him. The mistress, once alluring and supportive, revealed a more calculating side, her interests tied closely to wealth and control. Without the security he had taken for granted, he found himself struggling, his choices leading him further away from the life he had once known. Regret began to settle in, heavy and inescapable, as he realized the magnitude of what he had lost. When they finally crossed paths again, the difference between them was striking. He saw in her a woman transformed, strong, confident, and entirely beyond his reach. The realization hit him with full force, filling him with regret and longing for what he had so carelessly thrown away. But the past could not be undone, and the distance between them was no longer something that could be bridged. When he attempted to speak, to apologize, to reclaim even a fragment of what they once had, she met him with calm indifference. Her response was firm, composed, and free of emotion, a clear indication that she had moved on. There was no anger left, No desire for revenge, only a quiet strength that spoke louder than any words. She rejected him not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect, closing the chapter of her life that had once defined her. In the end, she rose beyond everything that had tried to break her. She embraced her father's legacy, building an empire with wisdom and resilience, while raising her child with the values she had always held dear. Through pain, she had discovered her true strength, learning that character is revealed in moments of hardship, that wealth cannot buy loyalty, and that real power comes from within. And as she walked forward into her future, she carried with her a truth that would guide her always. She had not lost everything. She had finally found herself.